Hello and welcome to the Riyal Deal, coming to you from the Al Arabiya English studios. This is your weekly bulletin, bringing you all the latest business news, headlines and analysis from Saudi Arabia. Coming up, Saudi Arabia greenlights the 2026 budget, forecasting a narrow fiscal deficit as the kingdom presses on with its bid to diversify the economy. On the sidelines of the Saudi-Russian Investment and Business Forum in Riyadh, the two countries unveil a visa-free travel arrangement. We ask, what else came out of that forum? We're going to be speaking to the fast-growing fashion brand Touché Privé about plans to strengthen their presence in the Saudi market. And a revamped Riyadh Zoo reopens for Riyadh season 2025, fast becoming one of the capital's most popular outdoor attractions. Now, we're going to begin with the latest on the 2026 state budget, which has now been unveiled. Well, the budget projects a narrower deficit of 165 billion riyals, or 3.3% of GDP, as the kingdom shifts its spending towards priority sectors, including logistics, industry and technology. Well, total expenditure is set at 1.31 trillion riyals, slightly below the 2025 level, while revenue is forecast to rise to 1.15 trillion. As non-oil income continues to gain momentum. Well, the government says 2026 marks the start of Vision 2030's third phase, aimed at maximising the impact of earlier reforms and boosting long-term growth, with a renewed emphasis on spending efficiency and infrastructure upgrades. Well, in a vote of confidence, Moody's says that Saudi Arabia's economic momentum remains solid, projecting strong non-oil expansion and faster overall growth as OPEC Plus production cuts unwind, reinforcing the kingdom's diversification push and medium-term outlook. Well, let's take a listen now to what the Saudi Finance Minister, Mohammed Al-Jadaan, had to say about the outlook.
Regarding the 2026 budget, you may have seen the figures. I will talk about them briefly. What interests me in discussing, beside what you saw in the statement, is that we are continuing with expansionary spending. The next 4 to 5 years will focus on ensuring the continued growth of all sectors, but some sectors will receive greater emphasis. These include industry, tourism, transportation, and logistics. A strong industrial sector and a growing tourism sector are impossible without an efficient transportation and logistics sector, as well as technology, which is the fourth, and artificial intelligence.
And that was the Saudi Finance Minister, Mohammed Al-Jadaan, speaking there. Meanwhile, the General Authority for Statistics has announced that Saudi Arabia's international trade totaled around 540 billion Saudi riyals in Q3. That is up 8.6% year on year. Well, oil exports accounted for around 68% of total exports. Well, let's get more analysis now. We can speak to Naif Alghaith, who is the chief economist at Riyadh Bank. Naif, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on the programme. The 2026 budget has now been approved by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. What stands out in that budget for you?
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for having me. As you rightly mentioned, it has been improved, and also we can see that it has been an expansionary fiscal. We can see from the budget statement, it is going to expand, and it's not only that, it will continue to expand in the following years, 26, 27, 28. So there's a continuation expansion, moderate expansion. And we can look also to the debt. It will continue with the debt, but with a maximum of 33% to the GDP.
Okay. And when it comes to spending, what would you say are the government's priorities?
Yes. So the spending has multiple layers of spending priorities. Once, we should remind ourselves, Ministry of Finance, take care of the spending of the different ministerials. And this goes mostly to as an operational spending. So CapEx will be around 14% versus operations will be the rest. Most sectors that will be continuing within the Vision 2030, not only the Ministry of Finance, are the health, infrastructure, we have the technology. We have seen during the US visit, there is a concentration in the tech sector. So this is just to name out of so many sectors that the vision concentrate on.
Okay, and when it comes to GDP growth for 2026, I just wondered, what are your expectations and what do you think is underpinning the growth?
So we saw the Ministry of Finance projection to have 4.6. IMF looks at 4%. From our perspective, we can see two things that driving the growth. We have the non-oil GDP and we have the oil GDP. For the non-oil GDP, continue projection of 4.5 in the medium term. And also we look at, this is the new part, where is the oil GDP. So this year it will contribute even more. So we will have around 4.6 for the non-oil GDP contribution. So the overall GDP will be around 4.5 to 4.7.
Okay, just before we crossed to, we were talking about a new report that Moody's has put out. They've given their credit rating for Saudi Arabia. And I just wondered what you made of that report and what it tells us about the overall health of the Saudi economy, and in particular about the medium to longer term, Naif.
Sure. As we saw in the report, there's a concentration on the health of the Saudi economy, the sovereignty, and the ability to pay debt. And Saudi Arabia continue to be an attractive place to be, and also attractive to buy its whether sukuk or bonds. So these are signals of the health of the Saudi Arabia economy. We can see whenever we have an opening for sukuk or bonds, so many investors are interested, and usually it is overwhelmingly booked and it exceed the amount that has been identified. All these signals the health of the economy, and also the projections of our economy is still positive. We are right now living within a global economy is not growing at the historical level. We are still growing at below historical. So investors are looking for economies that are growing higher than the global economy. And Saudi Arabia is one of these economies, one of the few economies that is growing above the global economy.
And just lastly, another piece of good news that's been announced. The Saudi Arabia Purchasing Managers Index rose in November to, I think, its second highest level in more than a decade. And I just wonder what your thoughts are about that indicator.
Correct, Tom. Right now, the PMI, or Riyadh Bank PMI, is at 58.5, and it is the second highest after the November reading, which was the highest over the 11 years ago. So it has been driven by the new orders. It is a continuation, which shows that the non-oil economy is improving. This paints a picture of what's going to be Q4 look like. So we are continuing to have a positive picture, and we need to remind ourselves this is second highest after the very high number. So to grow beyond the 60 in the second month, this is quite challenging. Yet we managed, as Saudi Arabia managed to have a very high number in November, which is 58.5.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk us through all of those subjects. Naif Alghaith, Chief Economist at Riyadh Bank. Thank you very much for your time. Let's get a quick check of some of the other business headlines from the kingdom. Japan is one of Saudi Arabia's significant partners, and the PIF governor says he wants to see more Japanese companies in the kingdom. Well, Yasser Al-Rumayyan made those comments at the Future Investment Initiative Priority Summit in Tokyo. Well, the PIF has invested $11.5 billion in Japan since 2017. That figure is set to increase to $27 billion by 2030. Saudi Arabia has launched a new bidding round for 3 major mineral exploration licenses. These cover more than 13,000 square kilometres across 5 regions of the kingdom. Well, the newly defined belts hold strong potential for gold, silver, copper, zinc and lead, estimated to be worth trillions of Riyals, while mining is a key pillar of the kingdom's economic diversification plan. And in a $1 billion deal, the US State Department has approved the sale to Saudi Arabia of support and training for military helicopters. Well, this marks another step in the ongoing US-Saudi defense cooperation. Well, according to the Pentagon, the package includes maintenance supplies and aviation training services. Now, trade between Saudi Arabia and Russia reached $3.5 billion last year, spanning numerous sectors. Well, speaking at last week's Saudi-Russian Investment and Business Forum in Riyadh, the Energy Minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, described business ties as, quote, perpetually warm, citing joint cooperation through OPEC Plus and expanding collaboration into LNG, hydropower and nuclear. Well, on the sidelines of that forum, a new visa-free regime was announced by both countries for tourists and business travellers, which is expected to take effect early next year. Well, let's find out more now. We can speak to Nikolay Kozhanov, who is a research associate professor at the Gulf Studies Centre of Qatar University and an associate fellow at Chatham House. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Nikolay. I mean, Russian business ties sound like they're pretty strong right now. What struck you that emerged from that forum in Riyadh?
Well, I definitely see the forum as a kind of a way to summarize the changes that happened in Russia-Saudi economic relations within the last 2-3 years. Basically, the big game changer or a turning point became Russia's invasion of Ukraine that compelled Russia and the global economy to substantially restructure the chain of supplies, making those regions that previously were not that much important for Russia from the economic point of view acquire these importance. And while a lot of people, a lot of experts, they were initially expecting that Moscow might leave the region and might leave the Gulf, being diverted towards its military adventures in Eastern Europe. On the opposite, Russia increased its presence, and the current forum it clearly demonstrated a wide range of those opportunities that on one has been already been used by Russia and Riyadh and Saudi Arabia to improve their relations, and on the other hand, that are still to be explored. So suddenly the relations between these countries, well, suddenly for those who are not watching these relations that close, definitely, it became way bigger than just the dialogue on oil and gas market or cooperation in the hydrocarbon sphere. So we definitely see the growing importance of Russia as a food supplier for Saudi Arabia. We see Russia cooperating with Saudi Arabia in IT sphere, in the sphere of high technologies, and what's more important, the growing importance of Saudi Arabia for Russia as a transit and transport hub, allowing Moscow to build up its economic connections with the outer world. And finally, while Russia is still being under the sanctions and the sanctions pressure is paramounting, we see that Saudi Arabia preserves interest in cooperating with Russia in investment sphere, and the area of mutual investments that are only growing for the last 2-3 years is quite wide.
Okay, so clearly lots of sectors and lots of potential within those sectors for collaboration. And I'm just wondering, out of all of them, where do you see the closest cooperation and how do you see that cooperation evolving?
Well, of course, we must acknowledge that the closest cooperation is happening within OPEC Plus framework. Both countries, they are actively trying to affect the situation in the oil market, making sure that the current instability and volatility of prices are not going to hit their economies hard. But at the same time, if we take this field of cooperation out of equation, we still see quite important areas of interaction. As I already mentioned, the cooperation, for instance, in the agricultural sphere is just strikingly amazing. Saudi Arabia became one of the biggest markets for the Russian meat export, for instance. Russia also values Saudi Arabia as the biggest, after Saudi, the biggest, bigger than China, importer of Russian fuel oil, which also became an important element of the Saudi realities during the summer, when the Saudis, they are compelled to burn quite a lot of fuel oil to produce additional electricity for the needs of their economy. And from this point of view, Russia is becoming actually an important and inseparable part of the Saudi economic realities and economic security. Finally, we also see the encroachment of certain Russian technologies and Russian economic presence in the daily life. For instance, Russian AI company Yandex, that's famous for its own AI software, managed to domesticate its Alice, the version of Siri, for the Saudi realities. And now the Yasmin, it's a Russian Arabic version of AI Alice, is getting more and more popular within Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Okay, now one of the things that came out of that forum, and I mentioned it in the introduction, is this visa-free regime for tourists and business people. What do you make of this decision? What do you make of this announcement?
Well, this announcement, this decision, first of all, it has quite important symbolic meaning. According to some analysts, such kind of an agreement was rarely signed before with any other country by Saudi Arabia. And by giving a visa-free regime to the Russian citizens, and quite comprehensive visa-free regime, Saudi Arabia definitely emphasizes its interest to promote and develop relations with Russia. Second, it definitely should be considered as an acknowledgement of a certain level that has already been achieved by the two states. And finally, it's one smaller step towards intensification of the economic and investment relations between the two countries by strengthening B2B relations within Russia-Saudi dialogue. Not to say that, of course, this is happening in a quite difficult times for Moscow, so it's also a kind of a sign for the Russian business that it's not going to stay isolated, and irrespective of what's happening in Russia's relations with the West, Saudi Arabia is ready to continue dialogue with Moscow. Not to say that this forum happened like only a month after the same type of the forum was conducted between Saudi Arabia and the United States.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, I read one of the articles you've written in which you say Saudi Arabia is what you called one of the linchpins of Russia's Middle East strategy. And I just wondered what you meant by that.
For Moscow, we also see the transformation of its geopolitical interests and its geopolitical priorities towards the Middle East. So before Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, we definitely see that Moscow was giving preference to, I would call it the old Soviet domain. So to those countries that were famous for quite close relations with Russia during the Soviet times and during the so-called first years of the so-called Russia's return to the Middle East in 2000s, namely Syria, Iran, partly Iraq, partly Algeria. But for the last 5 years, and specifically, as I mentioned, within the last 3 years, the attention is more and more getting focused on the Gulf countries that are considered to be quite important for the wide spectrum of Russia's priorities and interests, beginning from the political interests in diversifying Russia's international relations, and ending up, of course, with the economic interests, where we see the Gulf countries, and first and foremost the GCC countries, the Arab Gulf countries, being also kind of a springboard for Moscow towards its economic penetration in other regions, starting again with China and ending up with Africa. Of course, it's not related directly to Saudi Arabia, it's more like the UAE experience, but we definitely see, for instance, the growing importance for the region as a transportation hub. And moreover, in future, Saudi Arabia can even challenge the Emirates in terms of the importance of its role as a transportation hub for Russian goods and for Russian trade going to other regions of the Indian Ocean, or the East Asia and Africa. Not to say that in terms of the ideological, in terms of the domestic needs for Russia, these relations, they are quite important because they allowing Moscow to show to its domestic audience that Russia is not isolated and Moscow still is welcome in quite a number of capitals in this world. Apart from that, again, we should also remember that Russia is still pushing several projects of the regional integration, such as, for instance, Eurasian Economic Union, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, gradual inclusion Saudi Arabia in these projects is definitely one of Russia's priorities, and it's on its top list of priorities.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. We're out of time. Nikolay, Kozhanov, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Now, Touché Privé, the fast-growing Turkish fashion brand, is seeking to strengthen its presence in Saudi Arabia, which is the fastest-growing fashion market in the whole region. Well, this expansion comes hot on the heels of a $5 million growth investment from Amplified Growth Partnership. Well, the company is also establishing a partnership with one of Saudi Arabia's largest retail groups. Well, to tell us more about all of this, I'm joined here in the studio by Miraç, who is Touché Privé's GCC partner. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Thank you, Tom.
Let's just start by talking about Touché Privé, because some people might not be aware. You only do women's apparel, I'm told.
For now, correct.
What sets you apart from other producers of clothing?
Founded in 2014, we are the fastest growing modest fashion brand in the region. And our ambition is to be #1 modest fashion brand in the world. We have offices in Amsterdam, Istanbul, and Dubai. And what makes us different is our unique and elegant designs, unique community, and technology.
Okay, so you're keen to position yourself in a strong place in the Saudi market. Just tell us, what are your ambitions in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, exactly. I think especially the Vision 2030 has changed the fashion industry in the region. Saudi Arabia is a big market. Touché's design are really liked by women in the region. As actually creative women, they were really wearing our clothes. They made Touché famous in the region. And with the change of Saudi vision, with the Fashion Commission establishment, Minister of Culture's initiatives, we position one of the powerful brands in Saudi.
Okay, so who's a typical target customer for Touché Privé in Saudi Arabia?
I will say women between 20 to 45. We have a couple of customer archetypes. Mipsters who are really active on TikTok, women who are active in business life, and also women who are going to certain galas, events, and dinners. So these all customer archetypes are our customer base.
Okay, and what makes Saudi Arabia such an important opportunity for you?
Saudi woman has been changing in terms of look, from niqab to abaya to Touché look. So suddenly there has been a super huge market gap. So we are filling this market gap with our unique designs.
Is there anything unique to the Saudi market that you, in terms of the clothing you offer, anything that sets this market apart from other markets?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we look at the size of the Saudi market, it's vast. So when we compare with Qatar, Kuwait, or UAE, so Saudi women prefers more modest compared to other countries even. So there's a soft transition from abaya to colorful fashion items, so to speak.
Okay, and just talk us through your upcoming investments in Saudi Arabia, and I'm talking about people, shops, warehousing facilities, and so on. What have you got in store for us?
Right. So we are growing almost 100% year over year. And what we do with this investment is a strong base in the region, establishing a warehouse, improving our service quality, and really understanding our customer much better. So for us, finding 1,000 customers and knowing them by their name, understanding their needs and going after them and helping them to feeling comfortable in society. So this is what we do, really showing people what is possible in terms of fashion. And with the next investment round that we are planning, not just regionally, we want to establish our presence globally in Southeast Asia, in Northern Africa, as well as Americas.
Okay, so you've raised some $5 million
Correct.
for Middle East regional expansion. I'm just wondering, what's that money going to be used for specifically?
Specifically, improving our service levels in the region.
Okay.
As I mentioned, being more close to customers and understanding their needs and delivering those needs, as well as more stocks. And what we also would like to do is expansion a little bit more outside of the GCC in Egypt and Lebanon.
Okay, so in terms of expansion plans within Saudi Arabia itself, what would be, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
We have a very strong partner in Riyadh, actually. That's a very well-known family. So we are planning to open 2 stores in Riyadh and 1 store in Jeddah. So these will be flagship stores. We are super strong online, but also we want Saudi women to come to the store and see the difference of our designs, touch and feel our products. So this is exactly what we are going to do next 1 year.
What is the feel of your products? What's the differentiating factor here?
First of all, the unique design patterns. So when we look before Touché, we see a lot of products in marketplaces, right? But they don't solve problems. When you look at Voga Closet, Namshi, or any other 6th Street like marketplaces, you don't have the right products in terms of modest fashion. So it's basically gathering all the products in the market. So what we do different is a unique design patterns that really help women to feel safe, secure, represent their beliefs while being confident in society. So we help them to reach their full potential in society.
What sort of numbers of jobs do you see Touché Privé creating in Saudi Arabia, at least in the short to medium term?
Right. So today Touché is 160 people. We have 160 people employees. And in Saudi, in near future, we plan to employ 20, and gradually we would like to go up to 100 in short term.
Okay, so that's the plans moving forward. Sustainability is a key part of Vision 2030, and I'm just wondering how that goal matches up with Touché Privé's goals and products.
It's not just a word for us, it's our ethics. So we, from production to delivery, in each step, sustainability is in our code of ethics, so to speak.
Okay, so exciting times ahead. Just tell us what sort of a presence we can see of Touché Privé already in Saudi Arabia. People will be able to see it where and in what sort of form?
Oh, absolutely. Currently, we are already present in online marketplaces and also toucheprivé.com channel. But starting from March 2026, we will be having stores, most probably in Riyadh Park as well as Panorama Mall.
Okay, so plans for physical shops.
Exactly.
Exciting times ahead.
So when we look at the shopping behavior of the consumers, we see a mixture between offline and online. A lot of women, they prefer to buy online, but when they need to buy an item that is for special evening, they would like to go to store and they want to have touch and feel.
Yeah, they want to make sure it fits, I guess.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. We're out of time. Really appreciate you talking to us. Miraç, Touché Privé's GCC partner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And finally, Riyadh Zoo has reopened for Riyadh season 2025 and has quickly become one of the capital's most popular outdoor attractions. Well, the vast site, which covers some 160,000 square meters, is home to more than 1,600 animals. And amongst the biggest hits with the crowds, there's the elephant experience, and there's also an elevated giraffe walkway. Well, the revamped zoo has entertainment areas, workshops and dining areas, making for a full-day experience, and also adds to the kingdom's growing offering for tourists and residents too. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much indeed for watching the Riyal Deal, only here on Al Arabiya English. We look forward to seeing you again very soon.